All right, so we're live. It's January the 16th, and we have back for another meetings with Matt, and after Monday with the webinar session with Jim Vance, which we will send off to you guys if you didn't get to watch it live. But that's all recorded. We're just editing it up so that to ensure that any of the rough edges are taken out, and we clean it up a little bit. So we'll be sending that to you guys that didn't get to listen live on that session. But it was very, very good, very interesting, worthwhile. You're spending an hour of your time listening to that. Today we've got another meeting with Matt, but obviously it's a little bit different. We welcome back Purple Patch Pro Jesse Thomas, and Jesse's been in town for the last almost 2 weeks now. So just going through a little training camp. He'll shoot off for a week after this, and then we'll be back with each other for another 2 weeks in Hawaii, a little warmer setting, although it is, much to many people's chagrin, it's about 70 degrees and sunny in San Francisco all week this week, so it's not such a bad time for training. So what we thought we would do today, and we'll go about 30 to 40 minutes with Jesse, and then we'll let Jesse squeeze out of here. He's got another meeting to get ready for. So we've got about 35 minutes with Jesse. And what I thought that we'd do is we'd go through a little bit of an update. About 3 months ago, we sat down with Jesse and talked about his training. And at that point, was just starting to come back to training. And so I thought what we'd do today is catch up on where he's at, give you guys a little bit of insight into some of our plans for him and what he needs to work on, because it's interesting to hear, because it's much of the stuff that we've been talking about as a group and what you need to work on, but really where some of his focus will be over the coming 6 to 9 months as he's getting ready for his main event of the year, which is Mount Tremblant in September, the World Championships in September. And then open it up to a Q&A with the very small group that we have on the on live today. So
you better have lots of questions.
So you better have lots of questions. Dan, you can ask all your questions when you're riding with Jesse on Saturday, but maybe you want to do some of them live today. So we'll see. So we'll do that, and then we'll shoot off and answer any individual questions that we have for me, if anyone wants to talk to me. So why don't we start with this? Why don't you give us a little update? Really, since last time I think that we spoke, you, or at least we spoke on here, we were just getting back into where you were pre-running. I don't think you'd run a step yet. You were just riding and just swimming. So give us a little 2 or 3 minute update on where you're at and how the camp's gone.
So it's been a really gradual progression since then. I think what we finally kind of realized, long story short, was that my foot took a lot longer to get back into running than I thought it was going to, significantly longer. We kind of planned like 12, 14, 16 weeks, and it ended up being probably closer to like 24 to 30 weeks. So almost double what we planned. And what we realized was that eventually it was going to take some stress on my foot to like get it to loosen up and finally get it to where I could run. And it was going to be a matter of not keeping my rehab pain free, but dosing a little bit of pain to ultimately loosen up my foot and loosen up all the joints in it. And managing that, basically, being like intelligently progressing that, I guess, as I, over the course of weeks and months. So basically, then to now has more or less been a progression of back at it, slowly but surely. I also had a mountain bike accident that Matt wasn't too stoked about. It kept me from swimming for a while. But I'm pretty much back at it now. I would say last week, I wrote in my blog, last week was what I consider my first full week of real triathlon training. I put in about 21, 22 hours, pretty, I still weighted towards the swim and the bike, but also, with about 30 miles of running in there.
So. And most of the running we found as well, I think that's the interesting thing, because if this is your foot and basically where the injury was, give or take, and you've got a web of bones there held together with ligaments and tendons, So mobility of the foot is really important, and that's why in this type of injury or surgery, you need to actually load it to get the mobility back. And so he's going to have all sorts of phantom pains that aren't necessarily related to the break or the screws that are in there, but are really just loosening up. But in addition to that, we found really in 2 weeks that running at speed is better for you than running just easy.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think that's actually a good lesson with, a general lesson is that your form is typically better when you're running faster, especially if you're actually a relatively competent runner. Much less time of the foot on the ground if you're running faster. And so we've actually been doing some pretty good intervals. The other day you did 8 by 4 minutes, give or take 5 to 5:30 pace.
Yeah.
Just making sure you have complete rest, but really looking for good form rather than thinking about it as, oh my God, I'm trying to get fit and I'm doing threshold intervals. I think it's more form-based speed is the way that we're looking at it. Yeah,
definitely. And I would say, just that running faster thing, a couple interesting tidbits that would be, just good for you guys, to know is that didn't mean that I went out and I would just start running 6-minute mile pace right off the bat. We actually, Matt, every single one of my runs so far has involved a 10 to 15-minute walk before I start running to make sure that everything's loosened up, which has been really boring, but I've done it. I've done it every single time, and then just like Matt said, that also doesn't mean I'm going out and I'm running 7 miles at 6-minute pace. It means I'm running like a mile, and then I'm walking for 30 to 45 seconds, and I'm running another mile, walking 30 to 45 seconds. So, and then eventually I'll start to put some of those together and maybe decrease the pace a little bit and get back to where I'm running at full steam again.
I think another thing as well is that you have to. I think we've had to have a flexible application with when you run.
Yeah.
So rather than just having concrete, I'm going to run every other day, you might actually run every other day, but then have 2 days off because it just doesn't feel quite right.
Yeah.
And I think that's over the last 6 or 7 weeks. I think that's served us well. That I think you've had to keep a really, really patient, logical approach to it versus an emotional, goodness me, I want to be ready for Oceanside type
Absolutely.
thing.
Yeah.
And in fact, one of the things that that I think Jesse wrote about in one of his articles that is coming out, but is a return from injury. And
it just got posted on Triathlete Magazine site.
It did, yeah.
So.
But I think the biggest message was originally Jesse was really keen to come back and race at the end of the year. I'm sure that he wrote that it was his idea not to, and despite me being eager to. But the key is that for us as a team, you can't have your hopes and expectations drive how you integrate coming back from an injury. What you have to do is you have to follow your body and follow logic. And when your body comes back, that's when you're then ready to now, as he said, okay, I just did a 4 week of training. So really what that is he's obviously been training for the last 6, 8, 10, 12 weeks, but this was the first week that we actually trained without much thought about the foot. So you're going to go and do it. And even that, I say that carefully because we are always considering the foot, but it's literally full on training. Let's come back to it and we'll go sort of strong from there. So what's, when do you think your first races will be?
Well, we've talked about, I definitely want to do Oceanside. So that's right now for sure. There's a chance I might do Panama 70.3 if I feel confident I can get through a half marathon without, risking injury. And we will hopefully know the answer to that in another week or two, sometime probably in Kona.
And that was a little bit of a leading question because I want to get to the framing of these races. If you remember last year, you guys, Jesse was second at Oceanside in a sprint finish with Andy Potts, and it was really, I think, the best performance of his career. up till then. Wildflower last year was as good, if not better, potentially, but that really was a good fit, a good performance in a great field. And now you go back this year, and I think that you have to look at that race in a very different lens. So why don't you sort of talk about the year? It's a good segue to talk about the year and what you're going to accomplish and how you approach the early season races.
Yeah, I think like just comparing it to last year, like I came into last year off of 2012, which was like just a banner year for me. A number of good races, a number of wins, and I had uninhibited. I had a good break after that, and then I had uninhibited training basically through the winter. And so I knew I was fit and ready to go for 2013. And for me to start this year in the same mindset, like I'm going to be as competitive and in the same spot that I was in 2013, is totally unrealistic, and ultimately might make me perform worse than I actually can now if I was trying to make myself live up to those expectations. So I think like what I'm trying to do is go into first few races free of expectation and just letting them be what they are, which is kind of reawakening of my body and my mind to like racing again after, it'll be like 9 or 10 months off, and kind of see and use them more as data points than anything else. Let's get a data point. Let's see where you're at, and then we go forward from there. But all of it's built around the first part of the season, the second part of the season. All of it is built around 70.3 Worlds. And so in Mount Tremblant at the beginning of September. So when Matt and I put together my plan, that's where we started. It wasn't, here's your first race, here's your second race, here's your third race. It's, we're going to start here. Then what do I need to do as a tune-up for that race? Then what are the other key experiences I need to have to be ready to race that field and to race that race? And that's how we picked and choose my schedule. And so really, under that guy's, Oceanside in and of itself is kind of like a rust buster. Whereas last year it was, let's go there and let's race a monster field and see what you're made of, because you're ready to go.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about the year when you think you go beyond the injury, and we think about, as we start this year, but relatively quickly within the scope of endurance sports, whatever quickly is, you just before you got injured, you were a better athlete than you ever had been before, and there's no reason to anticipate that you shouldn't relatively quickly get back to that level. For us to go and win a world championships in September or be up in the hunt for that, there's obviously a lot of good athletes there, and it's by no means a formality.
Yeah.
But what do we need to do? What do you feel like you need to do in the sport to get better? And what are some of the areas? And let's focus more on this year versus in the coming years, where we might move towards longer distance stuff. Let's just
you mean like in the specific disciplines?
I think disciplines and disciplines and
like the global stuff.
Let's go global stuff.
Yeah. So it's pretty. This might be interesting because I think it's super similar to a lot of what you guys, think about when you think about improving year to year. I go through, and this article is in the current newsstand issue of Triathlete magazine, so you guys should have it at some point. But I talk about basically like setting goals and how at the end of each year I evaluate what I've been good at and then ultimately what's kept me from being as good as I can. And the three things that we identified, and they're kind of global things, and then within each one of those there's more specificity. But there's this kind of mantra, this word for me that I'm going to use as my guiding word through the year, which is professional. And in the past, you guys that know my that know my story know that I came to this sport as kind of like a second shot at trying to maybe be a professional athlete. And I'd been away from athletics for a long time, and it was kind of a fun, cool thing that I was just kind of trying on a whim, to be honest. And with that, I was balancing a whole lot of other things in my life with picky bars and with my family and a lot of other stuff that I'm doing. And as my career has become more successful, I guess, it's become more intense. And this year I'm going to be focused on trying to limit the external stuff as much as I can. I still want to be myself and I still want to be well-rounded, but I want to make sure that I'm addressing my day-to-day, my week-to-week, my month-to-month, progress as a professional athlete. And so for me, there are three main things. It's limiting external stress. That means decreasing a lot of my load at picky bars and, basically hiring people and getting people to take a lot of the stuff off my plate, picky bars during the season at least. Really focusing on my nutrition and sleep patterns, making sure that I'm sleeping have regular sleep patterns, and then I'm getting in enough sleep, and then I'm taking particularly during big blocks like this last couple of weeks, which have been really tough, then I'm making time to take a nap as often as I can, if not every day, every couple days. And then the third one is strength and foundational work. So it's basically, which I look at as injury prevention, more or less, in addition to actually making me stronger and able to create more power. But those are the three tenets that I'm operating on, and those are the three things that are the first to go when I'm not taking myself professionally, and I'm not treating triathlon with the respect that I should treat it with as a pro. So those are the three things that I'm going to be working on. And then, like I said, within each one of those, there's specific stuff,
I think that for me as a coach, not seeing Jesse every single day, we make very regular habits of having blocks like this where I get to see him. Seen him less in the last 6 months because it's been mostly rehab and guiding principles, as well as him obviously having Jude, his baby. But the interesting thing is that some of the work that we have been able to do in the last 6 months has been upper body work and a lot of mobility work. Coming as a runner, especially a runner who has broken their neck, and I think you still have bolts in there. Broken neck originally from years ago, so very limited range of motion in his neck, very, very poor mobility in thoracic region, shoulders. That's an area that we have really been able to focus on, and it's great to actually come back and see a 6-month progression where, for me as a swimmer that can get this nice natural streamline position, and Jesse last year being this and being proud of this because he didn't bang his elbows on the door when he was walking out, now being able to see him get this range of motion and see it translate to his swimming. So our swimming has been relatively limited, but actually seeing his swimming improve because of, I would say, the supporting cast. And then as a coach, having him live with us for the last 2 weeks relative to living with us in prior times, have a slightly more professional approach. And that's not to say that he was lazy or cavalier before, but actually focusing truly on fueling and post-exercise fueling, really quality nutrition, sleep being a priority over life and other things like that. And really, I always call them the supporting cast: recovery, strength and mobility, and nutrition. Obviously, that feeds into our sort of 4 pillars approach that I use as an educational tool and a mantra for Purple Patch. But very much a focus. We have swim, bike, and run things that we want to improve on, some specific areas in swim, bike, and run. But those are less interesting because those are things that we need to do, and quite frankly, we don't want to tell the world about. But those are things that we need to do to improve his ability to swim, bike, and run. But ultimately, to be a better performer, to heighten consistency, remain injury-free, enable him to maximize the training that he is going to do to improve some bike and run, I think that performance can really be elevated. And so I think that you're actually in an area of growth right now and very much a developmental triathlete, despite the fact that, you know, you've already had some good success. So I think it's really positive. It relays directly to what we try and do, what you guys try and do, where there is such an obsession over just accumulating hours.
Yeah.
And for us, it's true. I mean, you can. The last thing that I think about, we track it, but the last thing that we really think about, we look at it, but it's the last thing, is how many hours a week are you training? I think it's fair enough.
No, totally. Yeah. It's not I mean, just like I said, I track it, but it has more to do with what are the sessions that I'm getting in.
Yeah.
And you know, what do the sessions tell me about how fit I'm getting? And it's interesting, particularly that obsession with volume or getting hours in. So it goes along with that mobility, strength, foundational work stuff. What I've been trying to tell myself and remind myself of this year is that if I just spend 15 minutes of each workout, like let's say I have to swap it, like I only have 75 minutes to swim, and I say I'm going to spend 15 minutes of that doing exercises or stretching, as opposed to 75 minutes of swimming. I'm going to get 60 minutes of swimming and 15 minutes of exercises. That's probably going to make me a better swimmer than swimming 75 minutes. And same thing goes with the run and the bike. But it's just these things where you think like, you know, it really only takes 30 to 45 minutes 2 or 3 times a week to have a huge impact in your strength and mobility. And it's so much more valuable than an extra hour or 2 of training that week. And it's just reminding yourself, though. So for some reason, all athletes, it's so hard to do that stuff. And I'm the same way. It's my job right now. And it's like you know, it's like force feeding myself these like simple things to do, but it makes such a big difference.
And it becomes a decision. There has to be an active decision to make it a priority and to view it as a fabric, part of the fabric of the plan, instead of a afterthought.
Yeah.
And but it is, I think it's the challenge. Recovery, like truly being able to admit to yourself maybe that you're underperforming because you're overtired and needing a couple of days to back off or not going through a deep session. And then secondly, actually finding time to make the mobility and functional strength work a part of the program, and not, well, I'm not going to do it if it means that I compromise 10 minutes of my run because I need to get in 75 minutes. Otherwise, I'm not going to have the endurance. I think that is a really hard thing because it doesn't give you validation. It doesn't give you natural confidence. But ultimately, when it becomes habitual, the results are really, really clear for you. And I think that the clearest thing with you is definitely around what we've seen. Like the direct feedback is your shoulder mobility and range of motion.
And I'm faster.
You're faster.
I'm definitely faster. And I haven't swam.
It's faster now because he can get into the right place, and it's such a weakness for so many people. So, and of course it translates to other areas, but that is one direct thing where if with more miles of swimming, you would never have got that.
Definitely.
Even though the miles of swimming were critical and we had to do the last 3 years, you were very weighted in swimming, so it's very important. Let's do this. Let's go to you guys that are live. I'm not sure if you have any specific questions for Jesse, but for 5 or 10 minutes, let's go through and see if you have any questions, either for yourself, if you have a question that you'd like to ask Jesse about yourself, or about him and his training. It's all wide, and Jesse and I will answer the questions. So you might want to ask something about yourself or with Jesse. And let's go to Scott first.
Gosh, nothing. I have loads of questions, but nothing that would come up, I think, directly for Jesse or sort of relevant for the big discussion. So you can jump on to someone else, and if I come up with anything, I'll let you know.
Okay, cool. I don't have any questions for Jesse either. Derek looks like he's very keen.
Yeah, so Jesse, come race day, how how or will you hold yourself back in the run? Obviously, being a competitor in the first few races, how will you determine your run race pace, based on your past history, your injury, and kind of where you're at now?
That's a good question. I'll mostly determine it on, what my most recent workout was probably, and how that felt and what those paces felt like. And then also how I feel on the day. But to be honest, I'll take whatever I feel and I'll notch it down in I guess, or run slower than what I think I can handle. Just because I know that after that much time off of running, it's going to take some time for my body to be able to do what it's done in the past. And if it's a much smarter move for me to be conservative at the beginning of the run and finish fast if I feel good than go out there, hammer, and risk injury because my form is falling apart in the last few miles or something like that. So
and I think that there's I think the key message is that it has to be determined somewhat with how you're feeling, because we don't know how he's going to feel until he gets off the bike. But one thing that we will know is that he has to run 13 miles, 21K, and so he will start, and we don't care if all the other pros know this, but he will certainly start that first race or the first races with a more conservative approach. One thing we won't do, though, is we won't have specific parameters to say you will not run faster than X pace. I think there's an over-obsession with looking at the watch. It's all going to be guided by how he feels. I won't give him any parameters around pace. We rarely work on pace. And we're doing training, but when we go and race, I'm not going to say you should be 5 to 5:10 pace, X, Y, Z. You shouldn't be faster than 5:30 pace. I think that it's going to be more just a feeling of really governing and ensure that we're much better on the back half of the run than we are on the front half of the run. That's more risky if things collapse on the back end of it, sort of thing. I think overall, I think people are over focus on pace.
Yeah. I don't know if it's just that I come from a running background or what, but I do wear a watch, and I'll look at a split. I honestly almost never in the race. I look at it for information afterwards. Mm-hmm. But the way that I approach my run in my racing is almost always, it's a combination of three things. It's how do I feel in the moment, how much farther do I have to go, and how can I see myself either sustaining or not being able to sustain the pace based on how much farther I have to go, and then in my case, who am I reacting to in the race itself, and between those three things, that basically determines how fast I run. But if I was just out running by myself, or not specifically with someone, or just kind of trying to chase guys down, it would basically be more. It wouldn't be. I wouldn't be looking at my watch, being like I'm on pace or I'm off pace. It would be constantly projecting. I've got 6 miles to go. I've got 5 miles to go. I've got 4 miles to go. Can I hold this pace for another 4 miles or not? Mm-hmm. And I'd be evaluating that about every mile or so.
And if you don't practice that, if you always train purely by looking at your GPS, you will never hone in your internal clock. And I've said this before on here, but the athletes with the best internal clock are swimmers. And the reason for that is that every one of their sessions is always in a controlled environment with a pace clock. Runners get very good at it. But certainly the best are swimmers. They have very good internal clocks naturally, and it extends all the way through. But both of those sports, in fact, all three individual sports, cycling as well, while they have metrics in training, the best athletes will always highly focus on and retain the internal clock and how they're feeling, and are constantly every moment navigating through sessions or intervals or workouts and judging and assessing how am I feeling and where am I at? Am I at number 4 of 16? Okay, is this right or should I go on? And if you eliminate that and purely focus on metrics, you cannot be as good of an athlete as you could be. It is that's where the metrics become a limiter rather than an enhancer.
Yeah, it's actually, I mean, just a quick add-on on that. It's interesting. I was just thinking about it with regards to cycling or running. When Matt gives me, even for workouts, we'll use pace, but it's even after workouts, it's still just to look back and see how I performed, because everything's based on zones. So I'm zone 2, zone 3, zone 4, and within those zones, I mean, my zone 3 could be, there could be a 60-watt difference in my zone 3 depending on how I feel on that day, and so it's kind of like having that flexibility of being like, of not really looking like I got to hit exactly this wattage, but what does zone 3 feel like today? Mm-hmm. And then I look at the wattage really afterwards. And the same thing on the run. I do the same thing with the paces on the run.
Versus, and listen carefully here, versus having a range of wattage, and let's just say it's something arbitrary, 210 to 250 watts, and thinking, okay, it is prescribed as zone 3, and if I'm not at 250 because I was there last Tuesday, I'm going backwards and I'm failing. That's a big thing. So people automatically are like, here's my zone, I'm going to go right to the top of that zone, and I'm going to ignore how I'm feeling, and that's going to be my number. Well, guess what? That day, that might not be zone 3. Yeah. And so there are a whole other way is just to pull all your metrics away and just force people to train people on that. But then you lose the post information. You lose all the metrics of progression and validation for the day. I felt great and my power was good, or I felt awful, but my power happened to be good, whatever it might have been. There's all sorts of tools from information, which is great. But a big training mistake is I was at 250 yesterday, so if I'm not at 250 today, I must be going backwards, and it's a classic mistake. I don't know how we got here from the question.
No, it was definitely an over answer. But anyway, hopefully good information nonetheless.
Yeah, good information. Thanks.
Let's swiftly. Anyway, let's talk about God.
Politics.
Paddy, who are you voting for in the next election? No. Any questions for Jesse or me?
I do have one curious question. Jesse, do you do any of your running on trails?
Yeah, as much as I can, honestly. Okay. Most of the time, I mean, since my foot, since I'm rehabbing my foot, I've stayed away from anything rocky or anything where I could twist my ankle, or I'm really relying on a lot of intrinsic strength in my feet to keep my feet stable because they just aren't strong enough yet. But I run off pavement as much as I possibly can. So usually in Bend it's either dirt or like bark chip trails that I run on, and even for triathlon I do most of my hard sessions on stuff like that too. I just find places where I'm not going to be worried about spraining an ankle if I'm running fast. But yeah,
and that's the thing. I think that there's 2 types of trail running, or 3 types of trail running. Yeah. There's trail running that's roly-poly, and then there's stuff that's up the side of a cliff.
Yeah,
that was my question.
And then there's relatively even fire road type, or smooth, narrow, single track that doesn't have rocks and roots, or there's stuff that you're jumping over rivers and streams and through rocky fields.
Yeah.
It's obvious which one is preferable, but soft surface, compact soft surface is the best running surface that you can possibly run on.
Yeah.
Period. Okay. As long as you can control the terrain a little bit and it's not overly full of roots and rocks, and then it's good.
I definitely don't do sessions on anything that I'm worried about twisting an ankle on. It's just not, it's not worth the risk for me. I know I have bad enough ankles for it. but I will go out and do easy runs on that stuff for sure, because I don't care how slow I'm running. I just take it really chill, and then it's awesome. So
what I'm trying to stick with trails myself, because I'm coming back from some injuries as well. Mm-hmm. My only problem is that I keep finding myself on trails that are pretty hilly, and I'm trying to figure out a way to manage them without having to go to the pavement.
Yeah, it's tough. You know, like I for my rehab purposes, I seek out places where I know it's going to be not hilly and where the terrain is soft. You can look at if you are on Strava by chance or are interested, you can go and look at my page and see my runs over the last 4 to 6 weeks. A lot of them have been loops around a park, or I ran Lake Merced here, which is just like a 4.5 mile loop it's off pavement, off the side of the trail, but it's dirt, but it's flat, and it's, you know, I'm not worried about doing anything super steep. You got to be careful. Depending on the injury, you know, I can't handle super steep hills up or down right now. It's too much stress on my foot. So yeah, you want to modulate that with, you know, seek out those spots where you can find it. They exist in some places, but you might have to do multiple loops. And I've done a lot of that. I ran for an hour with Lauren in one park over Christmas time, and I probably did 12 loops. I think the loops were about, 5 minutes each. So sometimes you got to do it.
Paddy, for you in the West LA area, San Vicente, up and down that grass is probably the best spot. And even then going around the golf course up there, Brentwood, that's a sort of surface that you want. And
actually, that loop around the golf course is awesome. I did some workouts there when I was there.
Rather than going into the mountains and up there where all of that stuff up there is just very, 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 very crazy. So, Fernanda, you are now welcome back on here. You were banned for a while, but now you're welcome back. Do you have any questions?
I'm just listening today, thanks.
All right, good stuff. Super Dan, any questions for us?
No, just listening, and it's good stuff.
Ryan, any questions?
Yeah, I got a question for Jesse. How the hell do you get enough calories in the day?
Did you see my tweet yesterday, last night about?
Yeah, I did. I laughed. I saw that about the quesadillas. I was laughing about that, but like, at least from you knowing from like me coming from the running background, I don't know. Like, I can't get the calories down. Like, if I can get 2,500 in, and that seems like I'm like stuck by the end of the day. So if you, like, push me to get 4,000, I feel like I'm gonna be like drowned in the pool with a huge belly there type thing.
Yeah, so the biggest difference between what I ate when I was a runner and what I eat now is I just eat foods that are denser. So like, I think when we were running, it was real like low fat, kind of high carb diets. And I definitely don't follow that now. I eat carbohydrate post within my fueling window, as we call it, to recover. But then outside of that, I eat pretty fatty stuff. Lots of like avocados and nuts and I eat tons of Greek yogurt.
It's actually quite understandable. I'll tell you how Jesse Thomas eats. So gets up in the morning, has a bowl of Greek yogurt with very dense granola and maybe some fruit in there, and then goes and does his swimming, and then he comes home and has a bowl of Greek yogurt with some granola and some fruit in there, and the first quesadilla of the day. There's then an hour break before the second quesadilla of the day comes, a nap, some more hydration, fluids and everything. He'll have a bowl of Greek yogurt with some granola, and then he'll go and do his second workout, come home, have a big salad with 2 quesadillas. This time he's transitioned from eggs to chicken and cheese, fake cheese because he doesn't have dairy. Mid-afternoon, before a little bit of work, he has granola with yogurt and a little bit of fruit. And then he'll go and do his second workout. He'll come in, he'll have a recovery shake with a little bowl of granola and fruit. And then he'll have 2 quesadillas, unless Daddy has cooked him dinner, which has happened most nights. Big dinner, meatloaf, blah, blah, blah. And you think, that guy can't eat anymore. And then just as I'm doing the dishes, he's doing a quesadilla. None of this is a lie. He goes to bed an hour later, but right before bed, there's a big yogurt with granola and fruit. And he started the day, and then he goes to bed. It's probably 5,000 to 6,000 calories a day.
It is, yeah. It's about 5,000 to 6,000 a day.
The serious pitch out of that is right before bed, making sure that you're getting calories and making sure that the focus, the anchor of them, is protein. So the Greek yogurt hit right before bed. A little bit of fruit is okay. It'll create a little insulin
I actually do
spike.
skip granola right before I go.
But right before bed, skip the granola.
Yeah,
that's right.
Just yogurt and some frozen fruit in there, so it doesn't taste like garbage.
Yeah, but actually the fruit will give a little insulin spike, and then you'll crash, and you should be sent into a little deeper sleep. The protein there for some protein synthesis that goes on, of course, during night, so adaptations are good there. Back up in the morning, granola back in the mix.
No, but honestly, each time I have a quesadilla, if I have a big quesadilla, or it's either I have a big quesadilla or I have 2 small ones, and each time I eat one of those, I eat an entire avocado with the quesadilla. So that's a big part of how I get my calories in. But yeah, I ate 18 of the. I realized because I bought a 6-pack of big brown rice tortillas and a 12-pack of like medium-sized corn tortillas, and I bought those 8 days ago, and I finished them last night. So I had 18 of them in 8 days.
One of my son, who is 18 months old, is not 7, but one of his new words that he's learned is avocado, and but now he says avocado. No, Jesse's eaten them all again. I'm sorry, I have to go back to the store. So, well, good stuff. It's about time. Does anyone have any individual questions that they want to ask? And if not, we'll rock and roll. Any last questions? We can take 1 or 2 more if you want.
I can throw out, Matt, on the quesadilla part. I did pick up from one of Jesse's articles a while back that part of the genius of that whole thing is the pre-roasted chicken from Safeway or from the store. That makes that whole process so much easier.
It is.
It's like a 2-minute meal.
Yeah.
It's the best.
Pre-roasted chicken, rip the breast off. I saw him shred it. Cheese, avocado.
I don't even use utensils. Just do it all by hand. It's an extra step in the process.
I want to point out it's not just the quesadilla that utensils are not used on. So.
You don't need it for the avocado either. You just sort of mush it up and.
Yeah, you can literally mush it up sometimes and just squirt it out of itself.
Of all the Purple Patch athletes, Scott is fascinated with food preparation more than any other. There's a thread going on about food choices. It's all started from Scott. He's fascinated.
Yeah, so I think we're going to have some fun in Kona with all of this. So
yes, exactly. Yeah. So Kona training camp very soon, 2 weeks. Yeah. So we'll be doing some stuff from there. We'll certainly have. We'll keep at some schedule. We'll probably shift the schedule around a little bit in Kona, but when we are in Kona, we'll be out there for 2 weeks. And in that initial week with all the pros, we'll certainly do some stuff with the pros. We have all of our pros, 100% of them going to be at the pro training camp, of course. So we'll go from there. Well, thanks so much for joining. Thanks so much, Jesse, as well.
Thanks,
it's always fun. And we'll obviously recorded this. We'll send it out. And apart from that, keep rolling along. Good stuff. Go and do some work. You guys might be getting tired by now because we've had some pretty big couple of weeks to start the year. But next week, it's benchmark week. I hope you saw that on your schedule. Enjoyable. Cheers, guys. Take care.
Good luck on the season.
Thanks.